So, welcome everyone. We are glad you could take this time with us this afternoon. And yes, we are going to be sharing some stories that will help, we hope will help you in the work that you do. Today's title is Purposeful EdTech That Works, Reclaiming the EdTech Narrative. We know today in the EdTech landscape that there are some challenges out there in public opinion, and some of those um, we just need to work through and change the narrative. We want to own the narrative. We want to get ahead of it to make sure that we're doing what's best for kids. We know that through our collective efficacy that we can make a greater impact for kids in what we do every day. So this is being brought to you by the EdTech Innovation Committee. My name's Dave Jarbo. I'm the co-chair. And again, we're glad that you could spend this time with us. Our committee primarily develops resources on timely topics that we think can have a potential impact in the work that you do every day. But it's not about us, and it's not about us being experts. Today, you're going to hear real stories from members of our committee and about the changes they're making in their communities. And we're hoping that these stories will help inspire you and give you ideas that you can take back and use in your communities as well. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Laura, our host.
Hello, hello. My name is Laura Geringer, and I serve as the project director for the EdTech Innovation Committee with COSIN. Um, we're here to hear some awesome stories and recommendations and ideas from your colleagues. And I just want to say a quick note, if you're listening to the webinar in podcast form, there will be visuals down in the notes. So if we reference slides, that's where you can find them. To kick things off, I'm going to turn it over to Stacy Hawthorne, our COSIN board chair. Stacy, it's all yours.
Thank you so much, Laura and Dave. I am so excited to be here. And I loved what Dave said when he was talking. He talked about reclaiming the narrative. So why are we using that language? Why is he talking about it? Well, if you haven't heard, there is a call at the federal level to de-screen schools. We've had listening session at the beginning of December at the NTIA, and last week there was a congressional hearing held by the Senate Commerce, Science, and Transportation Committee, led by Senator Ted Cruz, on de-screening schools. The actual name of that webinar or that hearing was Plugged Out, Examining the Impact of Technology on Americans' youth. And so looking at ways that technology is negatively impacting students, and do we actually need any technology in K-12 education? Well, I'm assuming you got here because you're a member of COSIN and you probably believe that purposeful technology aligned with well-designed curriculum actually helps move students farther along. And so we really want to reclaim the narrative and start telling that story and not letting the one or two bad examples be the thing that's out there. So COSIN's really invested in this work. We want to protect our members and make sure that we're doing good by students. We also have a report out that is called the Screen Time Report. It's a Blaschke report, which we do a Blaschke report every year. We always pick a topic that's super relevant at the time. Last year's report was on AI and accessibility. It's a great report as well. And the 2025 report is on screens in balance, education, technology, and community conversations. And it is really a great report, but even more important than the report is an amazing toolkit that's designed to help parents, educators, everybody use screen time in a way that is purposeful and helping to move students along. There's a great screen time continuum, because one of the things that COSIN believes is not all screens time is created equal. If you are just, using it to replace doing a quiz on Google Forms instead of taking a paper quiz, that's probably not the best use of screen time. But as recently covered in NPR, a teacher in Littleton, Colorado, which is just outside the Denver metro area, is using cutting-edge technology to bring classic board games to life for sight-impaired students. This teacher is working with the students using high-tech tools, computers, laser cutters, 3D printers, traditional woodworking techniques, bringing it all together to take traditional board games that you and I played as kids and to turn it into a Braille version that's for sight-impaired students that they can play. This teacher shows that used intentionally and with empathy, technology creates new opportunities for students. There's another school district in Colorado as well. I have stories from other states, don't worry. We have lots of representation from across the US on our panel. This high school started the first ever performance drone program. So these are high school students that are learning to fly drones, learning to code drones, to program drones. They have their FAA pilot license because you have to have that to run a drone. They were actually just booked to do a drone show at the FETC conference in Orlando at the beginning of this month. Being a drone pilot is an extremely lucrative career, and it's also a career that's in extreme demand. There aren't a lot of people running around with spare FAA licenses that can operate drone shows. So the company that they bought their drones from recognized the value in having a whole set of high school kids that were licensed drone pilots and very adept at their work. And so that company is based in New York, will fly these kids on the weekend from Denver out to New York. They get paid to pilot a couple drone shows and they fly them back on Sunday and they go to school. These kids are making what entry year teachers make working 1 or 2 days a week. So when you talk about taking screens out of schools, you're limiting opportunities for students. It's really important that we use tech in a meaningful way and that we advocate for digital well-being. No, I don't think kids should be on cell phones during the day. No, I don't think kids should be watching Netflix at school. There's a lot of really good things that we can do. And that's what you're going to hear today from our panelists. So in addition to the screen time report, selfish plug, Laura told me I could possibly mention it. So I'm going to mention it. I'm really passionate about this, both as a parent, as a grandparent, as an educator. I believe that we need screens in schools and done well. So what I'm trying to do is help us reclaim the EdTech narrative. We do a lot of I'm so excited to hear that, Samantha. Thank you for sharing it. We do a lot of really good things in education. One of the things that we don't do well at all is sharing our stories. We don't do a good job of marketing ourselves. We don't do a good job of tooting our own horns. And so the negative experiences that people have with technology or the student has with technology, while it may be a real experience for that individual student or that individual family, it gets all of the glory and not a drone program where kids are flying to New York every weekend to pilot drones. And so we don't tell that. So I am working on a book project. I actually just officially came up with the name of the book 2 days ago. So you're the first group to get to hear it. And it's called Purposeful Technology, Powerful Learning. You can't ban possibilities, the subtitle. And it's literally all about telling stories of great ed tech implementations that are helping improve student learning outcomes. I have a son who had a speech impairment, and he is 29 years old. When he was in middle school, I had an iPhone. It was just called an iPhone. Back then, there wasn't an iPhone 1, 2X, 17, whatever. It was just called an iPhone. And eventually, it did have a version of Siri, and I'm not even sure it was called Siri at the time or not. And one of the coolest things, he got speech therapy all through high school. But as a middle school student, he would come home and he's like, "Hey, can I use your phone?" And I'm like, "What do you want my phone for, kid?" And he got speech therapy twice a week for 30 minutes at a time. But what he learned is, hey, I want to go to talk to my teacher about this because it matters to me, or I have these questions. But it was often hard for people to understand him because of his speech impairment. So he would practice for 30, 45 minutes to an hour at night talking to my phone. And when the phone could understand the questions that he was asking or what he was saying, then he knew he had the words right and he could go to school and ask that to a human and a human would understand him. How would we take that opportunity away from kids that are able to, have their accessibility needs met with phones? So again, super passionate. If you're interested in the book, I think Stephanie or Laura is going to put a link in there where you can say, hey, I've got a great story I want to share. But this is really all about setting the tone, talking about how we're being purposeful with technology. And I'm so excited that you're going to get to hear from amazing presenters over the next roughly 50 minutes. So I'm going to turn it over to our next presenter, which I believe is Johanna.
Thanks so much, Stacy. You are correct. Johanna is our next speaker. Johanna, over to you.
Hi, good afternoon. I don't know how to follow that. I am a technology coordinator in Osceola Schools in Minnesota. We are the 5th largest school district, and as such, we have between 21,000 and 22,000 pre-K 20 kid to age 21 scholars with us. And like all of you experience in a one-to-one environment, students break their devices. On accident, on purpose, they lose it, but we find them in the snow, and then we got to get them a new one. Our job is to make sure that everybody has access to the resources they need to teach and learn. And while our school is big, our district is large, our shop is small. We only have 3 internal staff. That are actively repairing our scholars' devices. And so this year we did 2 things to create some efficiencies in-house, to make sure that all scholars have the devices they need, but also to save money. Like everybody, we're looking at fiscal cliffs, and how do we create some efficiencies that save us money. And so we specifically looked at our student devices, and we said, how can we repair these smarter? How do we work smarter and not harder? And our team sat together and they divided up all of the types of repairs that could possibly be done on a Chromebook, and put them into 3 tiers. Something that can be done easily on site, something that might take a little bit more skill and nuance and resources, and something that might repairs that take hours, or shims. And so we have those 3 tiers, and between 3 tiers and a flat rate repair partnership with third party, we are able to offload some technical work when we don't have the in-house capacity. We are able to we come in under budget. We're coming in tens of thousands of dollars under for repairs and parts that we normally would, by partnering these 2 strategies together. And our student float is actually higher. We are able to hold and retain in a more appropriate spare device pool to ensure that all scholars always have access via a hot swap system, to just have a continuity of learning. We no longer have to say, oh, so sorry, your camera's broken. It'll be a couple of days until we can get you a new device. Nope. A child goes to the media center, visits their technology paraprofessional. We check out a new device, and take their old one. And then it goes through the repair process. Where does it fall in the tiers? What does it need? What is our current capacity? And then we, behind the scenes, make sure that our equipment is ready to go. And so by doing this, and partnering with a third-party vendor, our team has found that their work is more sustainable. Scholars are more comfortable coming to the media center. Hey, something happened. Can I get a new one? Yes, of course. We have found that this has increased. This has increased our ability to provide better services, and it's not super cool. It's not something we talk about, but functionally, it's been doing wonders for our large system and our small in-house repair team. And so, if anybody wants to talk about it, I am happy to go further in detail at another time. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That's phenomenal. The impact you've had both on your team and the financial state of your school district. And it sounds like on your staff as well. Thank you so much for sharing. Up next, we have Carrie. Carrie, over to you.
Hello, my name is Carrie Fulgham, and I'm from Lubbock, Texas. I serve as the coordinator of digital learning for our district. So we do all of the training across the district. And I wanted to talk a little bit today about kind of why I believe that we're seeing the pushback on some of the technology, and maybe some things that we should discuss on why we feel like it's important to keep it. So kind of feeding off of what Stacy talked about at the beginning, we have embraced technology to the point that now people feel like we have overdone it. And I feel like some of that is because so many platforms have moved to a digital platform. So we've moved away from textbooks, we've moved away from paper and pencil as much in the classroom, and everything is pretty much online. And that can be for multiple reasons. For one, because we're moving forward in time, and that is what the world is now, is we are moving into a digital component. But also financial reasons and all of the other things that come into play with that. I'm sure a lot of you can remember wrapping your textbook in paper bags 10 years ago, 20 years ago. I'm aging myself. But we've moved forward, and I think we've done that with the idea that we have to continue to move education forward as our world moves forward. And part of that is because our students need to be prepared for the colleges and the careers that are going to be their future, right? And we know that our world is moving into a digital age where you're going to have to be able to function online. You're going to have a job that's going to require digital components to it. So a lot of our education has moved in that direction. Now, to go back to some of the things that we're seeing as the pushback for the digital pieces is um, I think that we're um, seeing so much of our curriculum that is mandated pieces on online on digital resources, and we've lost a little bit of the digital creativity, the innovative pieces that we were doing with kids as the fun time at technology, right? So there was a time where we went to a computer class and you got to play and have some fun pieces. And everybody thought that that was pretty great, or at least most. I can't say everybody, but everybody thought that that was pretty great when kids would get to go and learn something new and be creative. And um, typically the kids were teaching the teachers something. I know they were in my room. But we have moved away from that to where our kids are on their devices all the time. But they're doing pieces that are required, that are mandated pieces, that it's basically your textbook online. We're clicking through different pieces. We're reading our um, RLA pieces and answering questions, or we're looking at a math worksheet and typing in the answers. Um, and not as much of the creativity piece. So, one of the things that I really want to talk about with people nowadays is embracing the opportunities that we have to provide students opportunities to be creative, to be innovative. Let them teach us, right? These kids have been living in a digital world their whole lives. Unlike us, where we've adapted to it, they know the technology, they're used to it. Give them some opportunities to be innovative with it. And I think AI has provided a little bit of that where we're having to embrace some things that we don't understand and learn from our kids. Um, but we also can give them opportunities like collaboration in a digital space. I think that's a huge, huge learning piece for kids is being able to create a collaborative whiteboard where everybody is sharing and you get to value other people's opinions. Also, I've seen the impact that some of our digital components can have on some of our students that have special needs or that just learn in a different way. I know one of our classrooms, we did a training on Notebook LM, and that teacher turned around and took it back to a classroom that was a special needs setting. And those kids interacted with a podcast and they were able to ask their questions. And the teacher wasn't having to think on the fly because the podcast system was answering the questions for her. Um, and it just gave them an opportunity to ask the questions that they wanted to ask and get a response. And if they didn't like it, they could give that response back. So it gave that interaction piece and the correspondence that they were looking for. I think that was a really cool example of a way that kids are going to need this in the future, right? And a way that we can embrace some of the technology pieces to help our learning. I know if I was that teacher in that classroom, listening to those kids' questions, which is something that we're used to, right? But having somebody else help me answer it would have been a huge relief to me and also a learning opportunity for me as a teacher to embrace a different point of view. So I really like some of those examples as ways that we can say we have to embrace technology and we have to embrace it not only in a way that we are required to, but also in a way that we're providing opportunities for kids because this is their future. And in order to make sure that they're going to be successful, because we know the job force is moving more and more digitally, we have to give them opportunities to embrace this and prepare them for the college and careers that they're going to be looking at in a few years. So that's kind of just a little insight into some of the things that have gone through my head and that we've seen here within our district. So thanks for having me and letting me share.
Thanks so much, Carrie. I love that you're pulling apart the nuances between mandated digital resources and creativity in digital resources. Stacy, I think you had a follow-up story there.
And Carrie, I loved what you said. One thing you talked about was technology providing opportunities for students to collaborate. I was doing a study on a school district in the mid 2010s, and one of their Spanish teachers had actually created a cohort program with the school in Spain that was students were learning English. And so once a month, they had shared Google accounts. The students in her class that were learning Spanish would work on a presentation on food or whatever the topic was, and the students in Spain would work on that same presentation but in English. And then the students would meet and they would talk to each other, and like that couldn't happen without technology. And the other piece that you said that was super important was about college and career readiness. When I was a tech director, and this is early 2010, so before the Spanish example I shared, I was invited down. I was a tech director in Ohio. My superintendent and I were invited to Ohio State University. They invited a select number of school district superintendents and tech directors, and they wanted to talk to us about a problem that they were seeing with their incoming freshmen. And that problem is exactly what you just described here in 2025, 26, Carrie. Is that, when students get accepted to Ohio State University or any university, they're academically qualified to be there. And so they said what we're really having a problem with, and at the time, students in Ohio State University were getting iPads as freshmen because a lot of their textbooks were on the iPads. They were accessing, you had to take, blended courses, online courses to get a degree even back then. And they said, so let's say we take one student from a well-funded school that's providing technology and access to some online learning opportunities and blended learning. And then we take another student that her school district provides none of those opportunities. First day of freshman year, Chem 101, those two kids are sitting next to each other. They're both academically qualified to be there. One can access their resources, one can access their curriculum, one can, complete their assignments on day one with no help. The other one doesn't even know how to get started. We're going to lose the one that doesn't know how to get started. And they were just as academically qualified to be there. So we need you as high school, and superintendents and tech directors to make sure that you're preparing kids to be successful in college, not just academically. And so I really loved how 2026, you're still hitting on that. So thank you. Sorry to jump in, but
Just to add to that, I think that right there goes all the way back to kindergarten, because we're having conversations of the testing that we're doing online, is it a result of the students knowing how to work the device, or is it their knowledge? And so if we're not giving them those opportunities, even in the early grades, we don't even know their knowledge set, or if it's a reflection of not being able to learn the devices and learn how to work online.
Building on that, I want to turn things over to Teresa, who has some really interesting examples of high impact tech use to increase student engagement.
Thank you.
And let me just.
We don't have to share it. Okay. We can at least have them in the comment or chat space later for people to access, since our podcast folks won't be able to see them. That's okay. I feel like Carrie set me up, and Stacy too set me up pretty well with some purposeful use cases of technology and really grasping how we can speak the language of students, how we can engage students using a tool that brings autonomy to them. So I am Teresa McSweeney, and I work for the Boise School District. I work in the IT department as a digital support specialist. I spend about 25% of my time answering help desk tickets and 75% of the time going out to our 53 schools and trying to figure out what's breaking with students and teachers so that I can problem solve. And something that I see both in the classroom and through our help desk is that we have students who are disengaged and teachers who are looking for tools that will satisfy our privacy policies and our use case scenarios in different platforms. And then we also get tons of help desk tickets where we're asked to filter and block different gaming platforms, different Google documents, especially that students are building so that they can play games. And I feel like one of the answers might be integrating Minecraft EDU in a classroom space through the lens of some purposefully driven instruction and lesson planning. So I have two stories to share with you. One of them involves a classroom full of students who had been together for a very long time, and 7 years, as a matter of fact, and kind of developed this brother-sister relationship. The school didn't have high turnover, so kids were sort of staying static for many years. And by the time they get to sixth grade, they remember the silly things that they did way back in kindergarten, and kind of made these clicky groups. And so we started introducing Minecraft EDU during a break time where I could jump in and control the settings and be a part of their world as a model. And they had agency over this because I had no idea what I was doing. I have never played Minecraft before that. And so they were empowered to help me understand what to do. And what I noticed started to happen is they started to my classroom was incredibly noisy because they were communicating with each other more. So while we were using this digital tool in a digital space with computers in front of us, it was really noisy. And they were communicating in a way that I had not seen before. And that extended to places like the lunchroom and the playground. And they started to integrate with each other. And there were fewer behavior problems. There was a better sense of community within the classroom space. So that was when I was a teacher. I've taken this model, and that's what some of my examples are on my slide. I've taken this model to a notebook LM for junior high students to actually access, and then for an elementary school teacher and I to collaborate with. So using a notebook LM to generate infographics and lesson ideas for our next steps, either with student access for our over 13-year-olds or without student access for our under 13-year-olds, we're able to track and elevate what we can present to them during our Minecraft EDU lessons. So at the junior high level right now, some of the sample work that I have there, we have creating democratic policies. Students have access to a notebook LM in their Google Classroom, and based on 4 principles of play that they co-crafted with us based off of our limited knowledge of the Minecraft EDU platform, we developed an infographic that we will refer to at the start of each of our Minecraft EDU lessons so that we have a base for play. We are just starting to limit which students are allowed to actually have this tool because, of course, they know how to misuse the apps and get around our filter. So the policies are pretty clear about what they can use this for. And then at the elementary level, we are trying to elevate their level of communication in a written form. So our goal that's restated at the start of each of our lessons, where we play for about half an hour, is that we are trying to use chat in Minecraft EDU to elevate our written communication in hopes that it will bridge some of our formal written communication as students write for their standards-based learning. So I feel like building that bridge and some of the things that Carrie mentioned about kind of painting a portrait of a graduate. Minecraft EDU has language that's relevant in many subjects. It brings a level of creativity and imagination that I feel like students understand and can identify with. And it gives me, as a non-user, a level of vulnerability that in a digital space, I think the students really value seeing that I'm trying to learn something new. So I'm a good model for, hey, I don't know how this works, but I'm willing to find out and muck around with you and figure it out. So I do have also a shameless plug for our Idaho GEG group, which is where we start to chat and communicate about things like this in a separate space. And so, if anybody wanted to know more about some of the work that we're doing with these tools, I would be more than happy to talk about it at another time. But I really believe in this power that Minecraft EDU and speaking our customers' language holds for our students.
Phenomenal. Thank you so much, Teresa.
Thank you.
Building on that and talking a bit more about the space where learning happens between what you already know and what you're trying to learn, we have Micah to talk a bit more about screen time and pedagogical friction. Micah, over to you.
Thank you, everyone. Just put something in the chat briefly to kind of oversee it. You can go to the next slide as we kind of explore what this idea is. And many of us know over the past 3 years how fast things have changed. And if anybody has been in the tech space for the past 15 years, we remember the way hype cycles go with, apps for education for the iPads are going to change the world, and then it goes down. And Google Apps before that, and it keeps going, and there's these waves. But what we do have these days is something that many of us across the United States, both as practitioners and as scholars, are looking into, which is we have a screen time problem, and we have tools that can pretty much do any content that the kids can access almost at any time to complete any kind of task, assessment, product, etc. So what we have to think about from a pedagogical standpoint is we have to think about screen time not as a block space, but as the way it is important as it interacts with teaching and learning and soft skills and all the other things that are required in my case, a constructivist framework where kids are thoughtfully going through these kinds of things. So we have a challenge here to equate this bad version of screen time, which is becoming a national conversation, kind of like a post-COVID kick of some of the habits that some of our institutions and schools across the country have bought ourselves into with the one-to-one devices that were quickly run into our schools because of those challenges. Now we're at a space where we have to explain that screen time isn't necessarily all bad, and we want to make sure we use that correctly. So engagement quality is key to screen time, just like anything else. It's not the actual idea of a screen in front of you. Many of us work with screens in front of us a lot of our days, and some of us begin and end in our with our tiny screens called phones in our nighttime or in our morning routines. But the importance is the quality of engagement. So what we've gotten to a space is we want to put into the pedagogical teaching and learning aspect of our kids. We want to make sure we're incorporating spaces to use thoughtful screen time and then remove those other spaces. And we can go on to the next slide, please. And we're going to talk a little bit about what I've seen in some of my research, and many people say it in many different ways, but we have to purposefully put into our teaching and learning and model as technology leaders different ways for us to help navigate screen time. The first thing is we want to make sure that we're designing tasks that require genuine mental struggle. That can be done with, as we've spoken with a couple of our teachers today, leaders today, including a Minecraft tasks or things like that. But it can also just do the same old corner of kids learning on blocks in kindergarten with their 30 minutes of playtime throughout that day. What we have to make sure is like we're designing learning experiences that requires kids to go through the mental struggle required to engage in mastery. And that takes instructional risk-taking and supportive community and ways for them to teach and learn. We have to I call that internal or cognitive challenges. We can incorporate this in both our screen time and our non-screen time spaces in our learning. And then the other one is we have to make sure we're navigating and realizing how important our social lives are with students. Many of our, I think it was Common Sense Media had 237 notifications a day for an average teenager at 16 as of 2 years ago, and a year and a half ago with fall of 2024 was their survey. And I think that has been updated since then. So our kids are constantly being interrupted, but they're constantly being social. So we have to make sure that we're incorporating the pedagogical friction of social and interpersonal times that may or may not include screen time, but it's the quality of that screen time that matters. For example, as we talked about, we don't want to endorse one product, but like Minecraft, if you're using a group Minecraft where they're solving an issue or building a thing and it requires interaction, if you're doing e-gaming experiences that run in teams that require interaction, all those things are social and interpersonal and can be very helpful to mental and physical well-being of our kids. And then the third and final thing is we have to make sure that we remove kids from their environments that they know. Many of our kids spend a lot of time in front of their screens, many hours, in fact. We want to make sure we are countering that to give them time and spaces outside of their digital worlds. We as analog people grew up where we had a difference between physical and digital worlds, but as we know, our kids don't have that difference. Their identity is wrapped up in both. Next slide, please, because I want to respect the time of everyone here. One thing that I did do that I'm incorporating across some of my sites, and I started just last year, was this is not an endorsement, but there are many ways for us to include screens that could actually be an engaging social and collaborative workspace. In this case, we use the Lou Interactive system that we put on top of one of my elementary school rooms, and it's like a large screen with lasers that is an interactive set of games that can be done with kids as a rotation as part of their PE time. So even though there is a screen involved, kids are learning how to play digital basketballs, taking a dodgeball and throwing it at a hole for points. You can do basic math reiteration games and things like that. There's a whole set of exercises and activities that keeps the kid active and that keeps the kids engaged while using a screen and using each other as part of that team building efforts. And that is an example of where we're actually embodying our reality and combining basically virtual and physical spaces into helping transform and engage students in a physical education program. That is one example, but the point is we want to drive movement, collaboration, and problem solving. And it just happens to be that we're using a screen to do this instead of something else as part of the rotation. So that's one simple step. And next slide, please, so that we can move on to, we also have a lot of us are in charge of STEAM and STEM after school or part of their curriculum and maybe science across the K-12 spaces. What we've decided to do with our STEM, we're just incorporating it. I'm new to this district in this space, so it's been about a year and a half, and we're incorporating not just gaming things for an after-school program, but also being able to think about hydroponic systems as one of our options so that they're doing physical things and working together, not just coding for like a game building. And then there's also other ways that 3D design and fabrication that works, and we're M-Robots where you're actually building them and doing those types of things that is actually physical, social, and interactive that we want to promote. And then we want to make sure whatever we're doing that we're trying to incorporate the struggle that's required for kids to learn mastery, as we know from the zones of proximal development and all of our great historical learning pedagogies to be able to engage in that. And then I have one next slide, please, and we'll move on to the fourth point. What we really have tried to do is create spaces where I've improved some of the learning spaces, and I'm doing it over time the next couple of years to be able to include Newline. In this case, like I said, not endorsing one thing, but Newline and BB systems to help with that interaction and giving kids the space to be able to use it both as a student and as a teacher as a space to share ideas, because many of our workspaces and workplaces will require that kind of collaborative experiences where you will throw things up on screens and then design ways where we can actually, hey, here's a model, let's talk through it, let's debate this and go through that. And that's the rhetorical friction of being able to supply Socratic seminars and other things, and we can use visuals as part of that process instead of just figuring, hey, let's put the kids on a corner for our intervention time and do our one-to-one intervention program. So that's another way that we want to do it, to encourage kids to interact physically, not just digitally, in the spaces that we have as classrooms. And then next slide. Last quick overview. Many of us do this in our places already, and so we are not experts. We're just probably reiterating best practices. But what I've been doing is we switch filtering systems, and I've been doing a screen time analysis, and I'm reporting out to my board and my superintendent ways in which I've noticed passive versus active consumption of our screen time. I've removed certain web sites that we spoke about earlier in another sense, where kids seem to be wasting their time instead of being focused, so that kids can focus solely on the educational aspects of it and then freeing up other instructional time. We also are trying to make curriculum adjustments to think about what screen time looks like, so we can kind of map out what it looks like and when we can and can't use it, and then give those kinds of guardrails and guidelines for families. And then we also are trying to work on problems of practice in our working groups as a district to make sure that we're kind of engaging in these challenging and supportive spaces. And also what we've noticed is teacher training and support is super helpful. So going to PLCs, teaching them how AI tools can be used for certain situations, and many times educating teachers that it's not just a physical or not just a digital tool that may be necessary, but maybe it's an actual other instructional practice that can be helpful. And then the last slide, I think, yeah, that's it. So thanks everybody for your time.
Phenomenal. Thank you. I love that. One of my other hats involves designing experiential learning escape rooms. And so I spend a lot of time thinking about that friction and the role of frustration. And I love the way that you're bringing it in here with the technology conversation. Up next, I'm going to turn things over to Katie. Katie, you're on.
Hello, everybody. I'm Katie Harmon. I'm from the West Hill Central School District in central New York, just outside of Syracuse. We're kind of a smaller school comparatively to all of the other schools. We're mid-size in our area. But when I first started, I was a former classroom teacher, and this was my second leadership role, maybe third. And then one of the things that I kept coming back to is what are the learning experiences we want to see in classrooms, and how can I support that as a tech director, and as a leader, as an educational leader, because I'm not just tech. I'm an educator. So we talked a lot about that in cabinet, and it came down to, teacher function and student function, and knowing when kids are all cognitively engaged, and knowing that they're engaged together and at the same time. Next slide, please. One of the things that I've noticed in my career is that the technology doesn't necessarily change the teaching when you're substituting one thing for another. So I know when I was teaching high school, I would be writing on the smart board and having to look over my shoulder, blocking the view sometimes. I'd call a kid up to annotate something, and it was one kid annotating at a time. And so we really try to get away from that front of the room, sage on the stage style, physical classroom. So we put the interactivity into the hands of the teacher, and they can teach from anywhere in the room. So next slide, please, or animate. And this has changed classroom culture and school culture quite a bit, I would say, over the last 5 or 6 years. We put a touchscreen Chromebook with a stylus, and it really doesn't matter what brand. It doesn't have to be a Chromebook. It can be a Windows machine. It can be an Apple iPad Pro, but we put that in the hands of the teacher and allowed them to wirelessly cast to whatever they had in their room. So super flexible. Whether, I think she has since removed her smart board from the room. So now she projects on the whiteboard. And so she can still use the whiteboard, but also she can annotate over anything on her Chromebook. The second part of that, the student function and cognitively engaging all students at the same time, we deployed a software program where the screen gets pushed to the student Chromebooks from the teacher Chromebook, but they also have opportunity to be interactive with the lesson, so the teacher can ask questions. They can ask them to graph or draw or work out a problem or annotate or highlight, giving their thoughts, checking in with SEL. It's called Pear Deck, but there's lots of things out there that do the same thing. And that was really, really important to us as a district, is just to involve all kids in the learning process and not just one at a time. And that's what made the most sense to us. And again, it's the function. It's not necessarily what we chose to do or buy, I guess. When it comes down to it, there's a lot of different things that do the same thing. But this is what works for us, and it allowed teachers to be able to teach from anywhere in the room, which is great for changing focal points for kids' brains. But it's also great for behavior management. Your back is never to the kids. You can walk around, practice proximity, redirection. This is a middle school classroom, but teachers in grades 3 through 12 we call it untethered teaching. And it's been awesome.
Phenomenal. Thank you so much, Katie.
Yeah.
Transitioning, I'm going to turn things over to Samantha, who's sharing some of the strategies to help improve access and reduce workload and strengthen instruction. So, continuing the conversation there. Samantha, over to you.
Okay, so a little deja vu here because, Joanna did a wonderful job talking about her program. We have a similar program here in Jenks. My name is Samantha Reed. I'm an EdTech coordinator in Jenks, Oklahoma, which is just a suburb of Tulsa. We're about 13,000 students. We have 4 technicians for our entire district, and we have probably close to 20,000 devices. So there was just no way that our technicians could come close to maintaining all of the district devices. We actually started our program almost 15 years ago, and it has grown into just something we're really proud of. 3 years ago, we built a new building and we designed our own classroom. So I've got a couple pictures here. You can see our parts closet that we've created. But as far as like our money saving, Joanna talked a lot about how much money it's saved. We have also saved so much money for our district as our devices reach end of life. We can recycle a lot of parts. Most screens are universal, if you don't know, for Chromebooks. So we can recycle all those screens from senior devices. We can pull all those before we surplus, and then we can use them again to replace broken screens on devices. All of our students, our staff actually never touches a Chromebook. They're all repaired by our students. This year, we also started a middle school program. So now we have one class at the middle school that's repairing all the middle school devices. The top picture there is the middle school came over to do a field trip at the high school to just kind of see what it looks like. Also a little bit of recruiting so we can continue our program here at the high school so that they hopefully will continue on in the program and be ready to go on day one. We've also, if you go on to the next screen, this is something that we use. We thought this might be kind of helpful, just something to think about. This is our mastery board for our students. You'll see our students' names at the top, and then it's all the different things that we fix on our Chromebooks. You'll see the models that we currently have. So we often have a different model for each grade level. So as the student masters each model, they get a box filled in as they finish, all the models for all screen ribbons for a model. They get an M in their box. As soon as they get to a point where they've pretty much mastered all of Chrome repairs, they then move on to what we call TSI 2 program. They then work with our technicians and they actually go out onto Central Campus. They follow a technician around and actually do repairs on our Central Campus, so at the high school. And we basically tell them we're running a small business. It's a job. So we treat it as such. We expect them to be there every day. We have had 3 of our technology student intern students come back and work as technicians in our district. 2 of them have now moved on and are now working at other technology jobs out in the real world. But it has, continued to grow. They work on certifications. So they leave, we pay for any certifications that they want. We prepare them. So there's a curriculum aspect to it as well as the repair aspect. And it has just been a phenomenal program that we just hope to see continue to grow. Our cycle on Chromebooks is 6 years. Students get their Chromebooks in 7th grade and they keep their device until they graduate. Somebody asked that when Joanna presented, so I'll just say it for ours too.
Wow, very cool.
Any other questions for me? That's what I have.
I'm not seeing any pop up in the chat, but feel free if you have more questions, throw them in the chat, and Samantha and the rest of our panelists will be hanging out in there. Okay, let's talk about resource and innovation processes. Melissa, over to you.
Well, I'm so excited to share some of the innovation and processes that we have. Some of the examples about really purposeful ed tech that the other panelists have shared are amazing. And you might be thinking, if you're joining us today, well, how do I get started? Or what are some of the processes or strategies that I might be able to use in my district to help me get really clear about purposeful ed tech? And so I'm going to share just a couple of things. I'm Melissa McCullough from Pasadena ISD. We're on the south side of Houston, Texas. We have about 45,000 students and about 8,000 staff or so. And so let's talk about a couple of different strategies you might take if you're thinking about this. So we're going to go to the next slide and talk a little bit about digital resource approval process. I know that one of the things I hear quite often from peers and other people across the country is it's become a little bit of a Wild West, and we're trying to rein some things in. Maybe we're seeing a continuum of not very purposeful use to really purposeful use, and trying to really think about how we can steward that in our own school or in our own district. So one of the strategies I think is really effective is the digital resources approval process. We implemented this here in our district, like many people have, in about 4 years ago. And we really did it for 4 really core reasons. One is we wanted to make sure that our student outcomes were at the center of the resources that we were using to help get them there. The second one is we wanted to be able to leverage our people to do the best job that they possibly could in the support and service and training for those resources. We wanted to use budget efficiently, and we wanted to be able to leverage quantity purchases for that purpose. We also were finding that our technology team was being pulled in a bunch of different directions all throughout the year as new innovative ideas came to the forefront, as well as new resources that somebody wanted to use. And so we wanted to create a really predictable, transparent process for submitting and reviewing and implementing at scale resources. So really thinking about when we make a choice to pilot something versus making the choice to scale it. And so how could we put a process in place that would really go from everything from I'm an individual teacher looking for a really quality resource to I'm a campus leader and I want to scale something campus wide to I'm a district level instructional specialist who's responsible for all PK to 12 English language arts. So how can we create that process? And then lastly, we just have a responsibility to be implementing best practices when it comes to both student privacy, parent approval and access, cybersecurity requirements. And so taking all of that kind of into play, we were able to create and implement this process. And so for those of you who are listening on the podcast, there's a couple of screenshots that are here that'll be at the end, as Laura mentioned at the beginning. But one of the things that we did was cross-collaborate with a team of stakeholders. So it doesn't matter if your district is small, your school is small. It's just about getting those different stakeholders in the room together, whether that's 3 people or it's 40 people, depending on your district. And we really wanted it to be about what are our values as a district and what are the outcomes for students and staff. And then build a process on that was about continuous improvement. So we review this process on a quarterly basis, what's working about it, what's not, and then tweak it as it goes. We embedded initial and ongoing training for staff on the process. And I think that's critical so that as we're getting new staff, as we're getting more people coming into the district who are learning about that process, that it's not a gotcha or, oh, you didn't know about this, but rather we're going to let you know as soon as you come and we're going to embed it throughout. We use the work order system in order to be really clear and transparent about the communication. And then we coordinate with purchasing and our business office. So it's not just the tech team, it's not just the curriculum and instruction team, it's not just our campus, but it's also our business office, and we're all a part of that team as we think about what resources we want to approve and how can we make sure that everybody plays a role in that process. And then additionally, we create opportunities, and we heard Micah say this earlier about those deep dives into data, really analyzing our usage and the impact of the resources that we approve, and what's the return on the investment and the value of the investment we're making. And so happy to share additional resources about that. But I think that that is a very tactical strategy. If you're really thinking about, okay, I need to get a handle so that I can make that promise of purposeful ed tech to my community. And I need a really tactical way to do it. Implementing a digital resource approval process could help with that. The second one is a little bit less tactical and more global and vision oriented. I think that over the last couple of years, what we have seen is this kind of intersection of an increased emphasis on student mental health and well-being, as well as an emphasis on innovation, and then thinking about, okay, well, how can we take that intersection of those things that are happening, and make sure that we build a framework or within our district to be able to not make those two separate things. That they don't have to be competing; they can work well together. And so over the last year, one of the things that I think you're going to hear about in a little bit are some of the frameworks that you can use for developing these types of initiatives. But this particular one we refer to as the Digital Innovation and Wellbeing Initiative. And what we think is really important is creating a system that's sustainable for supporting student outcomes. So, on the screen, you can see this really cute picture of some of our students and their teachers and some of their administrators. And this is our student advisory group, who really is the voices that came to light through this process. And they inform, they give ideas, they give feedback as part of creating this system of how do we embed in our portrait of a graduate the systems that we need to be able to support students to have all those attributes that you see around that circle. We were talking about it earlier, and I think Stacy mentioned it. Those attributes that students need beyond just the academics are so important. And being able to model that for our students through our leaders is also equally important. So we took a four kind of prong approach to creating this initiative. And we're in our first year, and we have 3 subcommittees. And those committees make up about 50 different stakeholders from our district. And like we mentioned, we're large, so it doesn't really matter. But in this case, we were able to bring enough voices to the table, including parents, community members, and students, to really think about how do we design norms for really healthy screen experiences. How do we not make SEL and mental health and digital citizenship separate things, but rather integrate them so that they tie together across our curriculum and across the experiences in our campuses? How do we leverage things that already exist in our district, like campus wellness teams, our tech department, and our instruction, to both learn together and then reinforce best practices? And then how do we make sure we're addressing community concerns? As Stacey mentioned earlier, the hearing that was hosted is hosted by a senator that is from Texas. And so we've been hearing this as a concern, and it's becoming really clear that we need to be able to educate our community and ensure to our community that we're taking their concerns proactively and that we are mirroring recommendations that we saw in the Blaschke report, as well as other best practices related to digital well-being. So very excited about this kind of nascent initiative that we've started, and really looking forward to moving forward with it and being able to share more about it as we move forward.
Thank you so much. Nick, I want to turn things over to you now.
Thanks so much, Laura. Yeah, I mean, we've been hearing a lot. We've heard so much from so many amazing leaders about illustrating how EdTech doesn't just work because we want it to, and really reclaiming that narrative on purposeful EdTech that also requires those core strategies, student, staff, and community conversations, high leverage experiences, and those purposeful structures that we've been mentioning that really allow for collaboration, creativity, and purposeful alignment. So I have the pleasure of highlighting just three additional frameworks that guide our work as a district when thinking about planning and evaluation, implementation, and instruction that may be beneficial to your districts as well as a starting point or as a way to continue these conversations. So the first framework that I'm mentioning is brought to us by the Center on Inclusive Technology and Educational Systems. It's the city's framework, and it ensures our decision-making processes include all stakeholders in the conception of ideas central to instruction and student growth. For example, when we think about decision-making processes, I think it's fair to say that we all feel good about an educator's role in teaching or an administrator's role in assessment. Um, but do we have that kind of same level of confidence with an assistive technology professional's role in infrastructure or an information technology professional's role in learning? This city's framework provides expectations and accountability for each professional role when engaging in those conversations and making those decisions. In our district, we've leveraged this framework to ensure our committees, most recently, those that are reviewing new curriculum adoption and EdTech tools such as AI include these various groups, which are leading to conversations that are deeply rooted in universal considerations for our students and staff that align to learning. The next framework that we use, once we've been able to make that informed decision, we lean on the value add of technology or the VAT framework to help guide our implementation. If the resource does not have a benefit to our students, we don't implement it. And a really strong example for us in our district is the adoption of a new curriculum or of a new communication platform. After a thoughtful evaluation, our communications department selected technology that has allowed our families to better access communication from the district. So announcements, newsletters, other alerts are all now streamlined across a variety of devices and automatically sent to families in their preferred language. The frameworks like the VAT also allow for targeted professional learning for our educators that are tied to specific outcomes, such as implementing technologies that provide multimodal features to deepen students' knowledge and increase engagement, and extending professional learning communities across contexts and communities so teachers can learn from diverse practitioners to practice high impact strategies. And then finally, the third framework that we really like to reference um, as we work together to reinforce strong communication and give additional thought to implementation, we we think more efficiently and effectively about how this affects our instruction with technology. And for this, we lean on the American Association of School Libraries framework as we consider how technology can align and enrich our curricular materials and provide robust curriculum supports. So this is rooted in research and professional practice. The AASL framework allows us to continue aligning our reading, creating, and instructional support for more common experiences across our district, and also affords us the opportunity to identify and grow various hands-on student experiences in a continually supportive and adaptive way. And all of this is to say, the voice that we've been talking about, the equality and the equity that's been introduced and promoted during this session and across our district and across so many others, it isn't standalone or by chance. It's thoughtfully curated to ensure we introduce technology in the moments that we know it'll have the greatest impact on instruction and learning. And with that, I think I'm tossing back to Laura, but it's also possible I'm tossing back to Stacy.
Phenomenal. Thanks so much, Nick.
Thank you.
I will take it and immediately toss it to Stacy. So you're right on both counts.
There you go. Thank you, Nick. Thank you, everyone. Wow, these examples literally prove everything we said at the beginning when Dave was here and said we have to do a better job of reclaiming the narrative. We have to tell our stories. What y'all shared was so powerful, and it's a compelling reason why EdTech done with purpose, aligned with curriculum, is so important for students. There's a reason that I like to take accountability when I can. And I think some of this, backlash we brought on ourselves because we don't do a good job of sharing what's happening and why we're doing it. And other people are going out there and they're filling in the gaps. And so think about not only what you heard from our panelists today, but think about how do you take what you've heard from your panelists? How do you take what you're doing really well in your district? Because going to venture to guess you are doing something really amazing, or you wouldn't be here to learn more and to learn new ideas. And share that with your parent community. We need to do a better job communicating with our parents. This is what EdTech should look like. The number of people that testified at the Senate hearing and that spoke on the listening session were talked about, oh, my student's on a computer and it's not filtered at school. Well, if you're in this room, you know that we have to filter computers for students at school. Tell parents we have to filter computers. These are the types of things that we're filtering for. If your student reports something that's outside of what they should be expecting, let us know so we can work on our filters. Like, build that dialogue and start to I work for I'm the COSIN board chair, and my day job is I serve as the executive director of the EdTech Leaders Alliance, which is the home for the Ohio COSIN chapter, student data privacy, CETA, and ISTE partner. And we're actually working on a program for our member districts that we're going to just give them freely. That's a parent communication night about what good ed tech looks like in schools and what they value in ed tech. And there were so many great things that we heard in this presentation. Use the COSIN resources. And I know Laura and Stephanie are just like on everything. They're so amazing. They're going to start posting them in there again, but we have our screens in balance. I saw that come up in a couple of people's slides. It's a great toolkit. This is freely available. Not everything that COSIN does is freely available. Some things are member-only resources. The COSIN Screens and Balanced Learning AI and Classroom Focus is a member brief, which is only for COSIN members, but that Plaschke report and the toolkit, that's free. Take the screen time continuum, share it with parents, talk about what's good ed tech and what's just consumer tech that gets lobbed into ed tech. So there's so much that we can do today and tomorrow to make this a better situation for our students. And that's why we got in education in the first place. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Laura, who's going to give you a very special invite.
Phenomenal. If you're looking to continue this conversation, in addition to the COSIN online forum and conversations with colleagues and community members, we have upcoming a Driving K-12 Innovation Summit, where we'll talk about the top 9 topics for driving innovation in K-12 in 2026, as selected by an international advisory board, including some of the people here today. That is coming up in just 2 weeks. And if you're interested in continuing this conversation as a member of a committee, this webinar is brought to you by COSIN's EdTech Innovation Committee. We meet every month and we dig into timely topics like screen time, like the future of work, and other topics that deeply affect our lives, our parents, our students, our community's lives. So there will be an application to join that committee coming out April-ish, or you can always email me, Jill, or Stephanie, or Dave with any questions there. Thank you so much for your time today, and I'll leave you with a reminder of Stacy's call to action. Have these conversations. Let your community know what you're doing and why. You don't have to have the answer for all problems forever for it to be worth having these conversations. So thank you so much, and we'll see you online and in COSIN world in the future.